Hey guys, this is GamerCow. Welcome to another Pokemon TCG history video. This time, for the first time in quite a while, we are doing a rotation video. I guess they just decided in 2009 they weren't going to rotate. They wanted to change the structure a little bit, I guess. Most of the eras so far, we have had 5 sets in rotation, and then 4 sets come out during a year. They rotate the previous 4. And it ends up being, you know, a 5-set refresh at the August time when, you know, stuff happens after Worlds. I guess in 2009 they decided we want to have more interactions in the game, and we're going to make it so that we have 9 sets at the beginning and 13 sets by the end, because that totally doesn't have too many cards in the card pool. Oh no, not at all. I mean, you could say that, but nowadays we have like actual thousands of cards in the pool because of the size of the sets. And yeah, they also kind of did the same thing in 2021 to 2022, right? Because of the pandemic and whatnot. So yeah, we currently have the same sort of situation going on in 2023, and even more so because they delayed rotation this year. It's kind of a weird thing. Anywho, that's for the modern day. For the past day, people, we have Diamond and Pearl base set rotating here, which is the biggest set for sure. In terms of raw number, we'll get into specifics in a bit. We do have Mysterious Treasures as well, which has a couple of cool cards to talk about, but not quite as impactful overall. A lot of the stuff in here actually doesn't rotate because it's down the bottom. We'll talk about that in a sec. Secret Wonders is what I would consider the biggest set to rotate here, because it has one of the few archetypes that still exists and is still like one of the best decks in this current format. The Gardevoir over here. We'll talk more about that as we go. And then finally, Great Encounters, which means that this guy rotates. A lot of people stopped playing Claydol because of the liability that it was on the bench by this time anyway. But most decks that actually did well still play Claydol, unless they were SP, and then they didn't, because SP decks don't need it. They play other stuff. We do also have promos and things that are done, you know, they're out of format as well here. A lot of these are reprints, so I haven't noted them too much. There's a couple of conspicuous spots here because they don't rotate. We'll talk about that very briefly as well. And yeah, it's up until DP22 is the first like legal promo from here. For some reason, despite them being released after, or at least a couple of these being released after the set cutoff, they also removed every Pokemon Organized Play promo set from the game as well. So we no longer, like, this one was released in early Diamond and Pearl. I think this was also in the, like, after Great Encounters, but before Majestic Dawn, so that's fine. But the other two, they released way later in, but are also getting rotated out. Maybe it was for exclusivity things, because a fair few of the cards here are only available within the this, especially Pop 9. These cards are almost entirely only available within this this like organized play thing, and they had stopped doing the Pop promos and stuff by now, so maybe that's why. It's strange though to just rotate them all out. So I have this broken up into, well, technically 4 categories. We've got the stuff that doesn't rotate, honorable mentions, which I have ended up expanding quite a lot here, the cards that actually might impact things, or, you know, do impact. Even some of these should be honorable mentions, to be honest. I think the Cyndaquil should be up here, but I just like him, so he's cute. And yeah, the trainers as well, and the one special energy that actually makes a difference that's rotating. So, stuff that does not rotate. Here's the promos that, you know, could have been. We've got the Dialga and the Palkia. They actually do stay. They have had promo printings in the 40s as far as the numbers, if I remember rightly. I did double check this, I just forget exactly the thing for it. But yeah, and the level X's have had 3 total prints, 1 in Great Encounters, 1 as the promo, and 1 as a much later promo. It was in a tin in like 2010. very strange because they haven't ever really... Well, this guy's kind of seen play. Dialga has not, but Pika has assured me that he is going to give me a thing to do that in the future, because it has one good time to shine. The armor and skull fossils do not rotate. One of the copies of the Rampardos and Bastiodon do rotate, but the fossils don't because there is a copy in the format, so that's fine. Duskball doesn't rotate. This was printed in like Majestic Dawn. The Energy Restore was printed in both Majestic Dawn and Arceus, so that doesn't go. Energy Search, pretty standard thing, it's in a lot of sets. Energy Switch is also in Heart Gold Soul Silver stuff, so that's fine. Plus Power got printed literally in the last set that we've just opened, so there's no... And there's also another print in like Platinum or something. I forget exactly which one, but it's recent as well. Pokédex Handy, as you see, printed in Platinum, so this doesn't go either. You can still turbo your deck a bit. Potion is just Potion, it's always going to be in format. Yep, so there's no change there. Premier Ball got printed in Stormfront as the most recent one. Pretty sure it was in Majestic Dawn as well. So, yeah, Majestic Dawn is the first set that we have in our new format, so that's why we reference that. Quick Ball was last printed in Majestic Dawn, so there's that. Red Candy has just had a reprint in the Heart Gold Soul Silver era as well, so... yeah, Great Encounters is rotating, but Red Candy is not. Super Scoop Up just got printed in Heart Gold Soul Silver base, so that doesn't go. Switch, there's only ever been like one format that technically hasn't had Switch for one set or something. I was way back in Gen 2, and yeah, Switch is forever, so that's fine. Warpoint just got a... yeah, it's Majestic Dawn. It does not actually have a print beyond that, so it will rotate next time, but not right now, so that's fine. Bebe Search got printed in Rising Rivals, so that's not going anywhere. Fossil Excavator got printed in Majestic Dawn, so if you do want to try and play a fossil deck, you've still got access to that. And Professor Oak's Visit was in Arceus, so yeah. Not rotating there either. Standard enough draw free. It's not amazing at this point in the game, but you know, if you really need that draw and you can't afford to like discard an energy or something, maybe you'll play it. Speaking of energies, Special Dark and Special Metal do not rotate. These are printed in one of the later Gen Diamond Pearl sets, but they get printed in, I think they get printed in the next Heart Gold Soul Silver set, actually, because I know they have a Heart Gold Soul Silver printing. So yeah, that's the last show for them, but they do stay for the whole of Gen 4. Honorable mentions. I want to put the Butterfree in here because Pepper actually made a really good deck with this. We didn't get to see it, unfortunately, because I didn't play him on the Saturday session there, but I did play him midweek, and it was kind of insane, to be honest. This thing survived like everything. Parallel Drain healing for the amount of damage that you dealt is not normally very good until you realize that Expert Belt is a thing, and like Cherrim can boost the damage output, so you're suddenly doing 60-70, healing 60-70, and it doesn't even have to be off of the Butterfree. You could heal one of the bench if your Butterfree is not taking damage, but your bench is. It's kind of nuts. The Pikachu over here, we can't actually evolve the new Pichu into this, so it's not that amazing, but if there was ever a situation where you needed Lightning XL from the hand, this would have been insane, and Raichu level X does discard energy from the hand to do Voltage Shoot, so maybe there would have been like a reason to use this later on. Yeah, unfortunately Raichu level X never worked out. Nidorina, this is the better Nidorina in the format, so its Rescue could potentially come into play, getting Pokemon from your discard pile, so yeah, you never want to attack with Nidorina, but it's the better version, so there we go. Nidoqueen itself was actually pretty cool when Mysterious Treasures first came out. In theory, this could be solid. I think there is a Nidoking coming out in the Heart Gold Soul Silver era that would like this, but Nidoqueen and King decks together have always been super complicated, because, you know, divergent stage 2 lines, etc. So, whatever. It's mostly for give aid. When this card came out, 90 for free was a pretty solid number, and you had Dusknoir to prevent the opponent from matching your bench size, so yeah. Clefairy has the Moonstone, so it can evolve the turn you play it. I have mentioned the Clefable in Heart Gold Soul Silver before for a double colorless. It lets you bounce one of your Pokemon back to hand, so that could potentially set up some pretty good control tool sets and whatnot. We unfortunately lose the Clefairy that instant evolves, so that's a bit of a shame. I still like the Clefable from Diamond Pearl base. It's never really been used, unfortunately, but with double colorless energy and just one attach from somewhere, you can go ahead and copy the opponent's attacks, which is very solid. There's a lot of good attacks you can copy, it's just there's maybe not enough that actually do exactly what you need. But copying Dragon Rush would be pretty solid, right? So I think this still has some potential. Alakazam is the last one that we're going to see as an actual Stage 2 card here. We don't actually see Alakazam again until the Mega at the end of Gen 6. Mostly because of the lawsuit stuff at this time. Now that has been lifted, they just haven't printed Alakazam again yet. So hopefully in the future. Power Cancel is an interesting effect. We just, unfortunately, with no Kadabra playable, it forces you to play Rare Candy basically, and that makes it kind of hard to justify. Machamp is an honorable mention because of Lucario Machamp when Diamond Pearl 1 came in, but also because this revenge style attack is going to see a big resurgence in Gen 5. There's 2 or 3 different cards that do this in the generation, and they are very good. So yeah, keep an eye on that attack. Slowking for control decks, there is a Slowking that came out in Heart Gold Soul Silver that rearranges the top 3 cards of either deck. This one you could pair alongside it because if one of your guys gets KO'd, like, I don't know, Spiritomb that you're trying to control for, or Sableye, depending what you're trying to do, you know, if one of your guys was KO'd in the opponent's last turn, you get to search any card out of your deck, which is exactly the sort of thing a control deck would want to do. So yeah, that's something you could play. Magnet Zone, no retreat cost on any of you guys with Metal Energy. I always thought this was like stupidly cool, but Metal Acceleration at the time wasn't really there, and by the time it came out in Stormfront, it was massively outdone. Right, there was no reason to play this one once the Search Zone and the Acceleration Zone and the Level X critically came in. If the Level X didn't count as an actual one of your 4 Magnet Zones, I think this would have been the 4th one, because 0 retreat on your big 4 retreat guys is insanely good. Weezing, curious one here. I actually completely missed that this even existed. At any time between turns, each player puts 1 more damage counter on their poison Pokemon. It's a bit risky because you have it on your own thing too, but most decks don't do poison. So I think there's a world where this and Roserade GL could actually be kind of cool. But yeah, that is not the world we ended up living in. This Chansey is the one that's got 100 HP, so it's slightly tankier than the other ones. If you're not playing double colorless and you want Blissey for like Blissey Prime healing or something, this is probably the best one because it's got the same retreat cost as the modern one. But I have since learned that Expert Belt Pull Punch is actually kind of strong, so yeah, honorable mention it is. Speaking of Blissey for historical reasons, I never liked this deck. I thought it was just hard carried by Cessation Crystal. That was the only reason it did well. I'm kind of right, but the Hippowdon showed me that the attack is at least as solid. You've just got to have another attack that kind of goes alongside it, because it's not good enough by itself. However, we do have double colorless in format now, so even though you can't recycle the DCE, you could still accelerate the damage of this attack a little bit more. So, kinda cool. But it did win Worlds in Seniors in 2008 and came like 2nd as well, so definitely worth a mention. Electivire, it can accelerate, no, the Secret Wonders one, which I actually didn't even put here, I don't know why. The Secret Wonders one can accelerate to itself. This one can move, you know, from the discard. This one can move the energy around if you've got Elekid underneath it, so you can shift it from the self-accelerator to this one to do 120 damage every turn. Pretty cool. Also has a level X that lets you shock the opponent when they attach energy to their Pokemon from the hand. So very anti-Rain Dance, pretty fun there. And Pulse Barrier is just better Sand Wall, and Sand Wall is disgusting. So yeah, gets rid of tool cards too. Super nice against energy gain. Magmortar was, I still say Leafeon Magmortar was the best deck in 2008 format. So yeah, I'm sticking with that. This card was amazing at the time. Flame Blast, like, you didn't even need Flame Body, you could just Cess Crystal this as well. Flame Blast doing extra damage for the fire energy that's on you was really good with Leafeon to accelerate energy in play. Then Fireball Bazooka just did a solid amount of damage spread across the opponent's board, so you could pick off things that retreated. Really nice. It has a level X as well. This honestly could be a regular mention, to be honest, because there is a decent Magmortar that I forget if it was in this last set and I just didn't talk about it, or if it's in the next one. It's like fire, double colorless, discard the top 3 of your deck, do 50 for every energy you discarded, and there are ways of stacking the top of the deck for energy. This guy could be the finisher, where it's 4 fire to snipe 100, discarding 2 energy as you go. Typhlosion decks could potentially use that. The only disadvantage is you can't use it turn after turn, so that's why I ended up playing the Charizard, because it just felt better. You can also auto-burn the opponent though, and do 3 damage counters instead of 2 for doing so. So it's kinda neat. This Gyarados was very, very cool in the Gardevoir deck, still one of my favorites of the era, where you accelerate from the deck with the Gardevoir, put 2 damage counters on this guy, and then it uses the Magikarp, which I think I actually have down the bottom here, to copy its attack and do 30 extra damage when you do so. So Flail, it's got 120 HP, it can tank a decent hit, and you're doing 30 plus 10 for every damage counter on it. Keep that number in mind, we will eventually get there, but yeah, it's very cool. Good body on the attack. Enrage is also kind of interesting if you play like Rainbow Energies nowadays to proc this as well. It could potentially get in, so yeah. Typhlosion is honorable mention because we do have Typhlosion Prime at this point, but I do like playing 1 copy of it in the Typh deck because it doesn't put the damage counter down, so that can be noteworthy. Evaporating Heat can also discard Rainbow Energies, so that can be something noteworthy. For Alligator, historic reasons, we played the Hurricane deck. Wasn't the best deck ever, but it was very fun, and that's all that really matters for it. Energy Cyclone is something I think we still have in format, actually. No, not quite. It's like Kingdra does it from the discard or something, so yeah. Cool attack, though. Furret was good in the hit and run deck that Matt played, actually. I thought that was a very nice one. The targets for the hit and run that are rotating, that strategy, we're actually going to mention later too. But Kenai is also somewhat solid. No energy needed for it. Search your deck for up to 2 cards, put them into hand. Baton Pass can be used with a double colorless energy, but the problem is this guy gets destroyed by like everything nowadays. We have Judge to disrupt the hand when you search. We have Luxray that will just like gust up around it. We have Donphan that with any damage mod kills it in 1 hit. We have Garchomp with any damage mod could kill it in 1 hit. You get the point. Furret's unfortunately past its time. Togekiss was really cool. This, alongside the Ho-Oh that we'll talk about later, is in the Skittles deck that I played in Great Encounters, and my god, that deck was the most fun I've had in playing like a basic for a while. You just put like 20 energy in the deck, almost 18 to 20 energy, different types in there, look at the top 10, accelerate like 4 energy because you find that on average, and Ho-Oh just does big number. Togekiss doesn't really do a whole lot, unfortunately. It's very inconsistent, and even when it does attack, it's like 70 at most or something. Kind of okay if you could flip heads against like Garchomp, C level X or whatever, but not really enough to threaten anyone. And also, colorless can get resisted. Murkrow, noteworthy because of the Riot Honchkrow that we have in format right now. This one evolves the turn you play it. Only honorable mention though, because the Honchkrow doesn't have a cheap attack that it can use, so yeah, I don't know how valuable evolving the same turn you play it is, but I guess if you want the power, it's probably good, so yeah. Speaking on Honchkrow though, there are a couple here that made a not very good deck if we're being blunt, but it was kind of neat at least. Let you copy the... Murkrows could copy Honchkrow's attack if you had the energy on the Honchkrow to do their attacks. So this one you could force the opponent to look at, to like shuffle away one of the cards in their hand. The hardcore level X, if you KO'd something with it, you could search your deck, discard for any one card, put it into hand. So it was really neat, but the problem is the Murkrows were like 60 HP and were dying to everything and didn't get damage mods by special darks and all of that fun stuff. So yeah, you ended up having to attack with Honchkrow anyway, and Honchkrow's attack's just not as good as the rest of the stuff. Unknown E gives you 10 extra HP if you attach it as a tool card from the bench, so sure, it's fine. We saw this with Pepper tested a Miss Mage's deck that discards tools in play for no energy to do 20 for every tool discarded, up to 80 base damage. So this was played there because it's a very searchable card for it. The deck was okay, but nothing like too special really. It's very bricky when you have to play a ton of stuff like that. Mantine, it's the last time you see, first and last time that we see Mantike, so I guess I should have put that in here too. But whatever. If you have evolved from the Mantike, you have 2 less retreat cost than all of your water Pokemon. That's pretty respectable. It means a lot of stuff is retreating for 0 or 1, which is pretty cool. Bench sitter stuff, inconsistent bench sitter at that, is not great though. The baby evolution mechanic really kind of messes this up too. If it was a regular stage 1, it might have actually been better, which sounds weird, but the thing is, you could start with this Mantine, so if you only played a 1-1 line, then you can never get this power, because Mantike can't go under Mantine when it's already in play. So yeah. Stantler was literally the decent lead at the time. Its lead attack for no energy searches for a supporter card, so if you could actually still play this, but Sableye kind of does it better, so yeah. Suicune, I think, just never really had the format where it wanted to be in. When you bench the Suicune, you could search your discard pile for up to 3 water Pokemon, not just basics, any Pokemon, put them into hand, which is very cool, to be honest. Problem is we had time-space distortion, which didn't have to be benched, so yeah. And its attack is turbo bad. It's only got 70 HP, so yeah. 3 water to do 60 and reduce damage by 20 next turn, blah. No shot. And it's even a bad way of reducing damage too, because it's not damage done to Suicune or damage done to your Pokemon, it's damage specifically from the defending Pokemon. So if that guy gets KO'd, or God forbid they switch to the bench, or even just evolve or level up or something like that, that effect goes away and you take full damage anyway. It's really bad. Ho-Oh, like I said, Skittles.deck, this was super cool. Rainbow Wing for 4 colorless was a little expensive, but it does 20 for every different type of basic energy that's on the Ho-Oh. So at a baseline you're doing 60 or 80 depending on how your energy setup goes, and it just gets fit up and up from there. It's a basic Pokemon with a decent amount of HP that can do like 100 and technically it can do 160 as its max if you have one of every energy type on it. Most likely you're going to cap out at about 120 or something. I'd still take that with the expert belt and stuff now, which is kind of fun. But yeah. Its Phoenix turn is the other sort of bit here as well that's worth noting. If you get KO'd by damage from an attack, you can flip a coin, and if you flip heads, you do not actually get KO'd. It counts as being KO'd, so the opponent still takes a prize, but you get to keep all your energy on this thing, and you just get to keep your attacker again. So yeah, it's kind of like Gengar, but in reverse, which is very funny. Sceptile, there is a Leaf Trans, Energy Trans Sceptile in format as well, so being able to make your basic grass energy on your grass dudes provide 2 instead of 1 is very cool for that sort of deck. There's 3 decent Sceptile. There's this one, there's the Energy Trans one, and then there's a new one from Arceus that does 20 for every grass energy that's on it. It's kind of like the Magmar up here, or the Magmortar. And yeah, you could... So if you could build a deck to run with all 3 of those, it's very cool. Unfortunately, yeah, it was never that amazing, but the idea is there at the very least. So honorable mention it is. Speaking of, Plusle, if one of your guys was KO'd in the opponent's last turn, you can get 2 basic energy out of your discard. I actually played this in, I think it was it a Rain Dance deck that I played this, or was it like Leafeon? I definitely did play this at one point. It might have been a Rain Dance sort of deck, where it's like, yeah, you just get 2 energy out of the discard. We don't have energy retrieval right now. We only just got Fisherman like 1 set ago. So getting energy out of the discard to the hand was something we didn't really have. And this guy was cool for that. Absol, blech, I'm sorry dude, this is not your finest hour. It got power-crept out as we went, so we could have unbanned it, but like, why? It was just stupid. Ripping a card out of the opponent's hand without seeing it, sure, like that's annoying, but if you rip a trainer of any kind, it takes another card out of their hand, like really? Just... This was the meta for, especially with Cessation Crystal, when that was in 2008 format, this was the opening meta. Like, the best version of Guardiolate I played had 4 Absols at start. It's just gross. Nowadays, we've got stuff like Spiritomb is a much better starter, Sableye is a better thing, we can power around this a fair bit, so it's not as ridiculous, but it's still, I still think, if we played it now, we could make a successful deck out of this. That's how dumb this card is. Also, Raid is pretty good, right? We have Expert Belt now too, so Special Dark Raid, you could do 70 with this thing on turn 1, and that's very powerful. Like, these sort of Donk style decks could probably still play this card. And if they don't get the Donk, then it just goes to being a pain in the ass instead. Bagon, honorable mention because of Rage. There's 60 HP Bagons in format that are better, but if you play Memory Berry for some reason, then Rage is available to the Salamence. That's kind of cool. Torterra was a menace in the Great Encounters format at the time, but unfortunately now is power-crept by other Torterra actually. So yeah, honorable mention for this one. Infernape, again, really good in the base set of Diamond Pearl. It was super strong actually. I think the only reason it didn't do better is because of the Empoleon over here, because Empoleon was one of the best decks of DP1 format, like Empo, Lucario, or the EVs and stuff like that. So yeah, being weak to that was unfortunate. But Flare Blitz worked with double Rainbow Energy to do 80 damage for 1 attachment and just go from there. It's great. The level X also rotates. This is maybe a bit more noteworthy because we do still have a couple of playable Infernapes in the format. 2 Fire Energy, search your deck, discard for 8 Fires to shuffle back in. You have to shuffle 8 Fires back in, but it does 150 damage when you do so. Absolutely insane. Burning Head also kind of works for this too. Look at the top 3 of your deck. 1 goes to hand, the other 2 go to discard. This is actually like Charizard tends to have that sort of thing sometimes as well. So yeah. Prinplup is the best Prinplup that we have. There's still a decent one in format, but it takes a lot more energy to do its thing. Aqua Shower, just being 10 snipe to each of the opponent's Pokemon, is solid, and Brine can do 40 if they've got damage counters on them. That's cool. Empoleon, historical thing here. This was basically the best deck in 2008, because it was highly statted in that format of like EXs and whatnot. Aqua Jet still did a 2-shot on them. It had access to Scramble Energy, it had access to all sorts of fun stuff. So yeah, the level X is potentially a noteworthy mention still, because we have a very strange Empoleon in format that has like Knockoff as one of its attacks that lets you discard a card from the opponent's hand. So in theory, if you go Judge plus the Supreme Command effect here, that Light Force Swords 2 of the opponent's cards, puts them face down, and they can't like see or use them next turn. And you then discard one of the cards out of their hand, so they go down to a 1 card or 2 card starting hand for turn. And we do lose Claydol, so maybe this is this would have actually been more than just an honorable mention, but it also rotates, so sucks to be it. Morphin Cessation Crystal setup, really, it was very cool in Great Encounters format with the Gyarados and whatnot, because Raging Scales, if it had any damage counters on it, 70 for 2 in a format that was, yeah, quite low to the ground in that. Power-crept now, obviously, we can do 80 for 1 on Blaziken FP level X, so yeah, Power-crept now, but still cool. Drift Limb, I always thought Wind Wave was a really fun attack because we don't get to do supporter recovery basically ever. Search your discard pile for 5 in any combination of Pokemon supporter cards, show them to your opponent, shuffle them into deck. Yeah, I thought there could have been a control deck with this, but we just don't get control supporters really in this format, or at least not good enough. And now we have Versus Seeker, so there would be no reason to play this anymore. Just play like Sableye for Versus Seeker and then Cyrus your way through. It's pretty fine. Garchomp was fun for the time period it was in. If the opponent has weakness to any of the energy that's on Garchomp, you do 110 instead of 70 with its attack, so it hits for like a pseudo weakness. But it doesn't work if you have special energy on, so it can't play with DCE, which is a big disadvantage for this guy. Lucario, historic thing, it was probably one of the better cards in DP1 for Aura Sphere being very strong at the time it came out. It got power-crept pretty quickly, but it does have a level X as well, which is also noteworthy, because when you level up into this thing, you have agility on the next turn. You have full immunity, which works with close combat. Did a very good amount of damage for its time, 80 for free, and then you take 30 more damage next turn, but you don't take more damage if you are immune, so yeah. We have a Rotom here as well that I played once because of the type shift ability. Lets you... I was playing like a Psychic deck and I needed to hit Lightning Weakness, I think it was. Was it because of Empoleon? It might have been because of Empoleon. I don't remember exactly why. But, no, this was beyond Empoleon. This is Pop Series 9. Yeah, I forget exactly why I needed the Lightning Weakness, but I did, so there you go. Poltergeist lets you look at the opponent's hand and do 30 plus 10 for every trainer, supporter, or stadium card that's in their hand. So, this is for Psychic instead of Lightning, so that's kind of cool. And the Rotom can become Psychic if you need to get around Lightning resistance and whatnot. So, yeah. And then finally, the two level X's for Cresselia and Darkrai. Cresselia I still think is a cool card, it's just been, I guess, outmoded by now. Full Moon Dance lets you shift one damage counter from anywhere on the board to anywhere else on the board, so you can set up some fun numbers stuff with that. I guess Crobat G probably does this idea. It doesn't technically do the same idea, but it does the whole, like, you know, fixed damage numbers thing better, which is why this doesn't see as much play. Moonskip is also somewhat cool though. Only 40 damage for 2 Psychic and a Colorless, but you take an extra prize if you kill with it. So, yeah, really nice. Darkrai was always the periphery sort of card. It basically turned all of your basic Dark Energy on your Dark Pokemon into special Dark Energy. So, yeah, you got bonus damage out of your basic attachments, which was awesome. Endless Darkless was also like an insane attack in its own right. You know, not a lot of damage out of it, but it forced the opponent to flip twice to wake up, and if they flip 2 tails, they die. Which is morbid, but you know, it's Darkrai, it's what you expect. So, yeah, almost 50 honorable mentions is kind of wild, to be honest, when you see that we don't have very much stuff down here. But that's just really the way this goes. There's a lot of things that were either cool in the past or have like some minor benefits now. But in terms of what actually is good, it's a bit more restrictive. And even you could argue if like half of these could probably go honorable mention as well. Beedrill is maybe outdone by Jumpluff nowadays, in terms of, at least in terms of ease of use, but you don't get to manipulate how much damage Beedrill does, and there's a search Beedrill still in format at this point, so it's a bit easier to set up multiple Beedrills, I guess. Band Attack it was the world's winner in 2009, right? 30 damage for 1 grass times the number of Beedrill you have in play. This is technically not the only time that Beedrill is good, but it's not common, so yeah, we savored this one. It was pretty cool. Ninetales, mostly not required anymore, but specifically in Luxape, I think it was, or maybe Blaze Ray could do it now as well. This was used occasionally because Color Shift let you change its type to match the opponent's type. So if the opponent hit themselves a weakness, like say a Psychic Pokemon, then Fire Blast could do massive damage to them, which worked specifically. Puka used this in, it was Luxape at the time, he used it in Luxape so that he could hit Mewtwo level X and one-shot thing. That was the check, because otherwise the deck completely folds to it. SP decks do have other ways around the stuff there. I see a lot of them will probably play Uxie level X now, so maybe not as important, but it was still historically a very, very good card in one of the most aggressive decks of all time, actually. So yeah, really nice. Mr. Mime and the partner in crime Shockle here actually are both going away. These are your hit and run wall targets basically. For Mr. Mime, if the opponent has 2 or less energy cards attached to them, then they don't do any damage to you. If you've leveled up, if you've evolved from Mr. Mime, then you also prevent the effects of the attack, but that never happens basically. Because Mime Jr. is terrible, so you don't play it. Yeah, this card is crazy good. Because it's energy cards, so DCE, which is very often used to cheat the amount of energy cards that you attach, doesn't let you go through this, so it's insane. The Shockle that it partners with prevents all effects of attacks, including damage done to it by special energy users, so again, double colorless, very good punish on that. So we lost a couple of hits there. We mentioned the Magikarp before, not really too much to note there. Paragon 2 is pretty good. The Paragon Z is very fringe, but since we're losing Claydol as well, I could have seen playing this as an engine actually. Once during your turn before you attack, you may discard a supporter from your hand and use the effect of that supporter as the effect of this power. So it lets you play extra supporters per turn, which typically in like a more modern sort of format that would be broken as hell. Usually extra supporter stuff is like Lieutenant Surge's secret plan is insane, right? But we don't have the control. Again, I guess we kind of do now. You could maybe build like a Paragon control deck, but then you get decimated by like bench hitting and stuff, so I don't know. I mentioned this Indigo, this should be honorable mention, but it's just because it's only got a +10 to water and a 0 energy attack, so it is de facto the best Cyndaquil for evolving up into Typhlosion, and Typhlosion is amazing, so yeah. Croconaw is a bit more of an actual mention though. For Alligator decks are still decent, but one of the things they have a hard time doing is managing how many energy they have in hand compared to how many draws they get. And Evolutionary Vitality is a way of getting extra water energy into hand. So once during your turn when you evolve into this thing, look at the top 5 of your deck, choose all energy you find there, show them to the opponent, put them into hand. It doesn't actually say all water energy, but we'd be playing this in for Alligator Prime, right? So clearly we would want to be playing mostly water energy here, but you are able to take like double colorless and stuff as well, so kind of cool. Unknown G is a pretty big one. It lets you become immune to effects of attacks if you attach it as a tool from the bench. So this was really good for SP decks to get rid of Machamp's effect. It was good to use in Gengar decks so that the opponent couldn't, like, you know, bypass Fainting Spell, as disgusting as that is. And it's just generally a decent tool to prevent things like Luring Flame from Blaziken FP level X, the Poison and such from, I don't know, like a Rose Raid or whatever. There's a lot of cool stuff it can do. So yeah, bit of a loss. Weavile, I hate this card, to be honest, because it's just so slow. I get the idea, and I get why some people use, like, say, Dart Flygon, and when we didn't have DCE, there was a Guardy version that played this, and yeah, I get it, but it's still bad. Dark Engage lets you change your active to Dark for the turn, so you get the benefit of special Dark Energy, which is good because this thing, for 0 energy, accelerates any 2 Dark Energy from the deck. The thing is, in the deck, special Dark Energy still counts as a Darkness Energy, so you can accelerate the special energy with this thing too. Chip Off is kind of neat, but very underpowered. 40 damage for 2 dark, 60 if you've got specials on here, I suppose. And you chip the opponent's hand down to 5. They choose what to discard. So you never get to look at the hand with that, but you know, it's okay. The thing is, as a stage 1, it always just felt ridiculously slow to use this as your thing. And you're leaving your board vulnerable, I guess, in that state. Nowadays you could get Lux Raid on the thing that you've accelerated to, but even in the past it's like you're leaving an 80 HP dude up and you need this dude in play in order to take advantage of the special energy you've just been at. It's a mess. You know what isn't a mess though is God of War. I'm not entirely sold on this thing being the strongest like card of all time sort of thing, as people tend to say. I do think it was always up there as one of the best decks, which is kind of ridiculous, to be honest. There were a lot of times where it couldn't see play, right, because we needed double colorless, or we needed like a double rainbow / scramble energy for this to be good. But on the surface, like, there's just so much to love about this card. The HP is very low, that's the disadvantage. Telepass is ridiculous though, forcing the opponent to like play around the whole supporters in the discard thing, which they can't really do, right? But nobody's playing Driftblim to get around your God of War, let's be real. You get to use an extra supporter, and it's one of the opponent's discarded ones, so they can never get rid of it again. And then Psychic Lock is underpowered. Even now with Expert Belt, I still think this is a little bit under, because it's... I don't know, we're in a weird format that way. But like 60 damage for a Psychic double colorless, you've got to find a DC specifically, but you've got extra consistency with the God of War. 60, and the opponent can't use Poke Powers next turn. Yeah, you shut off their Claydols, and you shut off any like support base that they have. You shut off acceleration powers, all of the fun stuff. Yeah, it's oppressive if it works out. But the problem really is that the deck can't one-shot with it, right? And 110 HP is so frail that if they do get to just hit you, and a lot of things will hit this number for 1 energy at this point, you have a hard time keeping up. God of War level X can somewhat mitigate that. Like, Bring Down is not an attack that you're really going to use just about ever, but you can set some stuff up with it, I suppose. 2 Psychic Energy, KO whatever has the least amount of HP in play, excluding yourself. It can KO other God of War though, so do be careful about that. Teleportation is what makes this card the one of in every one of these decks. You get to switch, basically. If God of War's on the bench, it becomes active. If it's active, it goes to the bench. So, yeah. The other thing is, we do still have a God of War that lets you shift energy from bench to active in the format. So God of War level X could have actually seen play there too. Gallade was the quote-unquote muscle for the deck. Psychic Cut was the main attack that was used here after double Rainbow Energy rotated. 60 plus for Psychic double colorless, but if you flip face down prizes face up, you get to do 20 damage more for every prize you flipped up. The prizes always stayed face up though, so you had a hard limit on how many numbers you could add to this. But it is still a cool attack, and it's the only way that you're actually doing like 100, 120 or whatever to kill stuff. So yeah, it's the big muscle hit. You always play one of it. I'm putting Minun in here instead of honorable mentions because I think the draw 2 is generally stronger for most decks than the energy retrieval. If one of your guys was KO'd last turn, draw 2 cards. We actually saw this, and it saw play on Oricorio GX near the end of Sun and Moon, where it was like draw 3 cards if one of you guys was KO'd, but it was a 170 HP 2-prizer. This thing only gives up 1 prize if the opponent decides to snipe it. So I think it's really good, actually. It is a Poke Power though, so ERL would destroy it now, but we haven't had ERL for the majority of the format, so yeah, it's neat. Trapinch, you wouldn't think this is an super noteworthy thing, but Flygon does still exist in the format, and both of these attacks are extremely strong to copy with Memory Berry. Force the opponent to switch for a colorless, or 10 plus the opponent can't retreat for a fighting energy. This creates one of the only mill decks in the so far in the format. Like, we get Durant and stuff later, but this is the first time a mill deck has actually been playable because the Flygon level X erodes the opponent's deck at the end of every turn. So yeah. Claydol, what more needs to be said about this guy, to be honest? If you've seen any of the video stuff we've done, you'll know the power of this one. Once during your turn before you attack, you may choose up to 2 cards from your hand, put them onto the bottom of the deck. You do have to put at least 1 card down to use this. If you do, draw until you have 6 in hand. Absolutely ridiculous. Bottom decking the cards, if you have played with Marnie in recent times, you'll know that bottom decking the stuff can often be good because you don't redraw the stuff that you are putting back. So that's amazing. Draw until 6 is obviously incredibly strong. We haven't seen much like that. We had Porygon 2 in Gen 3 that did this, and it saw play. It was great. So yeah, draw until 6 is ridiculous, but it also lets you draw more than what a Porygon would do because you get to shuffle, to like bounce, not even shuffle, bounce the cards to the bottom of the deck, and that frees up the hand to draw more cards. Absolutely insane. Not even a hard once per turn either. So yeah. Duskull, it gets here instead of honorable mention because there are actually still good Dusknoirs in the format, and this would benefit Spiritomb decks as well, right? You can go Duskull, Reapercloth into the Dusclops in the hand, and then Spiritomb evolve into a Dusknoir. And there's still 4 good Dusknoirs, 3 plus the level X that's in format. This one was arguably always the best one though, unless you wanted to attack with the Dusknoir, and then it's not super good, but that's only because it's expensive. Dark Palm is a disgusting ability, and maybe we haven't utilized this one enough. It's just been hard to, it's always been a tech slot, and it's been hard to justify the space for it a lot of the time, only because it requires Rare Candy for most decks. Once during your turn before you attack, if your opponent has 4 or more bench Pokemon, you may choose one of them and shuffle it and all cards attached into their deck. Gross. This lets you remove one of their attackers and then KO the active attacker, and they probably don't have anything left after that. Absolutely insane. Hard Feelings is also kind of a decent card as it decent attack as it goes later into the game. I remember having a really hard time with this with the Ho-Oh deck actually, because without Unknown G, which was hard to fit, this attack just kind of got to the point where it one-shot Ho-Ohs, and because it doesn't do it by damage, it doesn't let you flip for Rebirth. So yeah, it was like really easy to get down to 3 prizes against this deck. Oh, like 2 prizes, yeah, 2 prizes left, and then they just one-shot you every time, and it's like, well, what do I do now? You know, I can't keep up with that. Torterra level X. I mentioned there's still a lot of good Torterra in the format. We're probably not going to see them because the variant that plays it is Flyterra, and Flygon is well overplayed on this fight now. So we're probably not seeing it. But this was still very, very strong in the heal Torterra stuff from Unleashed, where you get to counter-catcher the opponent. If you're behind on prizes, you just gust up one of their guys. And Vigorous Dash is your big payout number in that deck, I guess. 100 damage and 30 to one of the opponent's bench, but it does do 30 to itself as well. 160 HP though, also very big. Pachirisu, you could argue this is honorable mentions, but the Helix deck that got top 32 at Worlds did play 3 of this, so still noteworthy. Call for Family is, I think, the strongest this attack ever gets, really. I know the Dunsparce can do the same thing, and it then let you switch as well, but this has more HP and actually a good second attack that isn't just like luck paralysis flip. So yeah, Smash Shot is really good in the SP format because it lets you discard energy gain from it. I was going to say Expert Belt, but that's every other deck. Yeah, you get to discard a ton of energy gains if the opponent plays too many of them down, and yeah, it's super, super solid. Lumineon has probably been outclassed by some other stuff at this point, but if it's active, you can force the opponent to bring in a Pokemon that's got a max HP of 100 or more. Yeah, just Gusting in general, pretty solid. It does have a retreat cost, which kind of prevents it from being crazy awesome, but it's still decent, and Reverse Stream is an okay attack. Play this with Rain Dance actually, and bounce all the energy back to hand, and then Feraligatr them down next turn anyway. Lets you mod the damage that you have. Very vulnerable to Judge though. And then finally, the Azelf. This card lets you, with the Uxie and Mesprit that you'd be playing down for consistency and disruption, lets you force the opponent's basics to pay 1 more to attack. Very solid anti-SP tech in Regigigas, and that actually let me beat what was not a good matchup in Dialga Alakazam, because this guy forced the energy cost to be prohibitively high. So yeah, finally the trainers. There are not very many of them, so we can shotgun this as well. Night Maintenance is not exactly replaced by Palmer, but generally is. Palmer is a supporter that does 5 instead of 3, but it is a supporter, so sometimes you don't have the capability of doing that. Night Maintenance will come back in Gen 5 as Super Rod, so we will get this effect back in format later. Time Space Distortion, a lot of people played Pokemon Rescue instead of this because TSD is hella expensive. Because it was a secret rare, it's like 1 in 3 boxes on average. So yeah, but objectively this is the better version, because you flip 3 coins, you're 7 out of 8, you're going to get at least 1 heads, and that's the same as Pokemon Rescue. Any extra heads that you get more Pokemon out of the discard pile. They go to hand instead of the deck, which is why I like this a bit more than Night Main for certain decks. Honestly, you could probably play this in like Jumpluff as well, it would be pretty cool. Felicity's Drawing, depends what you're wanting to discard off of this. Arguably, Engineer's Adjustments is better because you discard 1 energy and draw 4, where for this you have to discard 2 cards to draw 4. If you only discard 1, it draws 3. But if you're wanting to discard non-energy cards, then Felicity is your only option, and we lose it, so rip. Professor Rowan was never particularly good. It was a stunted Shuffle Draw 5, where you actually keep 1 of the cards in hand. I always theorized that if you played this, it was because you were wanting to keep an Unsearchable in the hand. Say, you would keep Rare Candy and be looking for the Stage 2. But yeah, it's clearly not strong enough compared to the plethora of search and like the search supporters that we had, but also now the draw cards have caught up, and we have Professor Oak. So Professor Oak's new theory outclasses this humongously. Roseanne's research is a little bit more cloudy though, because Pokemon Collector does outclass it in a lot of ways, but Roseanne can search for basic energy, which is actually kind of hard to do, right? Energy Search is not a card you typically want to play. Roseanne lets you get a basic Pokemon and a basic energy at the same time, where now we just kind of don't have that effect. So yeah, this one will be missed, even though we have a basic search replacement. Team Galactic's Mars wasn't ever really good. I played this with the Absol because it was dickish, and like Absol at that point you could just strip their entire hand down, but it was never really good enough in this era. Keep an eye out for this again later though, because Mars in Gen 7, I think it is, actually is really solid, and it's pretty much the same thing, just discarding the card instead of bottom decking it. Yeah, well, it turns out when you can play multiple supporters in a turn, this is what I mean, right? We could play Porygon Control with something like this, and it'd be very, very annoying, but I think annoying is about as far as it would go most of the time. There's not really a win con for that deck. Team Galactic's Wager is largely outclassed by Judge and arguably outclassed by Looker a lot of the time. It could be more disruptive if you win the RPS, but if you don't, it's you shuffle draw 3 and the opponent shuffle draw 6. And at that point, that's your supporter for turn as well. You've probably lost in terms of the setup war. So yeah, it's a much riskier disruption card, even if it does have more devastating payout. Lake Boundary, technically Lucario GL level X does this as well, and we're moving away from the ×2 like the ×2 weakness thing not existing, because every card from here on out is going to have a ×2 weakness. The reason this is still a noteworthy mention though is because it's a stadium bounce, and also Lucario GL level X is an SP exclusive tech basically, whereas this could be played anywhere. So yeah, if your deck really needs to hit ×2 weakness, but doesn't have space for Lucario on the bench, or you know, you just don't want to use it because it's bad, yeah, late boundary is a thing. Moonlight Stadium, I think this is the only type stadium that we lose, and I think this one's actually super huge because Spiritomb is a Dart type, like that and Sableye, because those two specifically get affected by this. This is a big loss. Retreat cost of every Psychic and Dart Pokemon in play is 0. Also, Uxie and like Azelf are still going to get played, and they get affected by this too. So, yeah, removing the retreat cost on your guys is obviously very, very good. So, big loss. Speed Stadium could have been a historical, like, honorable mention, but it's a stadium bounce, and it's a fairly benign one. Yeah, if the opponent flips a ton of heads and they draw a bunch of cards, you feel bad, but honestly, it's just to get rid of broken time space in play. That's pretty much it. Amulet Coin and Leftovers are end of turn effects on your actives, basically. If Amulet Coin is attached to the active at the end of the turn, you draw a card. If Leftovers is active, then it removes damage counter. It's only at the end of your turn, so they're far too slow. They don't really do much of anything. But there aren't very many trainer cards that rotate, so I'm noting it anyway. And then finally, the final print of Multi-Energy. Good freaking riddance. I hate this card. I do appreciate the balancing factor on this. It was Rainbow Energy without the damage counter ping, so there has to be some of a disadvantage to it. But the fact of if you have another special energy on, it loses the rainbow aspect. Ruined so many decks that I played with this stuff. And I ended up just playing the basic energy of the other type that I wanted most of the time. As a low count card, and especially in decks that don't require multiple energy, this card is good. But if you need multiple colored energy, stay the hell away. Or guess I stay away in general, because it's banned now. It's not going to be in format. So yeah, this is my list for stuff. I realized there are a lot of honorable mentions there, and I did see I took a long time getting through. But realistically, there are maybe like 10 cards that are super relevant here. We've got the Gardy, the Gallade, obviously, the Dusknoir, the Claydol, wherever that is gone down here. That's going to be pretty big. The Moonlight Stadium, I think, is particularly big here. Night Maintenance, because not every player wants to play Palmer. And that's generally it, because, like I said, all of this stuff stays. So, yeah, when you actually look at what was being played in the top decks at the time, not a lot rotates. You could argue Multi-Energy, but we have Rainbow, so I think that's just generally better. Oh, and Roseanne. Yeah, that's probably the core things to look at. Unknown G can get put there as well. I don't know. Well, we could just keep adding cards to this as we go, but realistically, there's only maybe 10 that like will actually change the way we build our decks, but there are just a lot of cool cards that we will never get to see again, and it's worth talking about them all. So yeah, I hope you found it interesting at the very least. I do realize that we are basically in an hour here. Yeah, so a long time talking on stuff, but thank you for listening anyway, and next time we'll be actually doing, more gameplay stuff and seeing some of the cool decks we can still make before this format goes away. So until then, take care.